Join Holly radio show. Moments away, Benjamin Vogt will be with us. But first, a word from our good friends at Rise Gardens.
Rise Gardens is a revolutionary hydroponic gardening system for your home. Instead of food traveling hundreds or even over 1,000 miles before it hits your plate, harvest the veggies, herbs, and greens you need for dinner tonight in the comfort of your home. No green thumb required knowledge. Gardening made easy with the Rise Gardens app. Step-by-step guidance from seed to harvest. A complete garden on a shelf. And comes with everything you need to grow healthy and the freshest food for you and your loved ones. Fully customize your garden to your needs and preferences. For more information, get your Rise Garden. Visit risegardens.com.
Holly, let's go to the hotline and bring in our guest for this week.
Benjamin Vogt is the founder of Monarch Gardens, a prairie-inspired design firm. They specialize in lawn to meadow conversions as well as urban shade gardens. He is also an author, gardener, writer, and landscape designer. Welcome to the program, Benjamin.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to not only educate Holly and myself, but all of our listeners. And I'll start with this. What sparked your interest and got you into the landscaping, design, garden, etc.? Where was that aha moment for you?
There were two big aha moments, though the first aha moment was not exactly an aha moment. It was just sort of indoctrination by the fact that I live with my mother, who was an avid gardener, and I would take lots of trips to nurseries with her, more as just a way to spend time with her and get out of the house and away from the rest of the family. Both of us were introverts and loved to get away from the house. But I think that was the first sort of latent gene that was placed within me. But later on, once I got married and my wife and I bought our first house, I just dove into gardening. I was like, we are going to have a big old garden. I started with 1,500 square feet. We're just buying whatever they had at the nursery that I thought would work in our soil conditions. Some of those were native plants. Some of those were milkweed. And one day I saw caterpillars eating the milkweed, and I was like, whoa, that's not cool. I spent $15 on that plant. I'm going to go get some insecticides and take care of those caterpillars. And then I said, wait, I'm going to go research this, see what's up. And then I started figuring out, hey, all this wildlife around me is using these plants, and that's actually what I want. And from then on, it was all native plants. It was all habitat. It was all building the garden, not just for me, but for all the life around me.
Well, and we see this in the vegetable world, that people whom aren't educated see something in that manner, something's eating it or something's on it. Let's spray something, not knowing that it's not only going to kill the bad bug, but it's going to kill all the bugs because it's a non-selective herbicide or pesticide, and they're doing more damage than if they just would back away and go, hey, let's figure this out before I start jumping in head first.
Oh, absolutely. And I tell vegetable gardeners all the time, the best thing you can do if you want to reduce pests is to have wilder spaces around your vegetable garden, of native plant gardens that are going to bring in beneficial predator bugs. Like, there's so many of them, including wasps. So it's good to have diverse habitat around your veg beds.
Fantastic. So you do the lawn to meadow or lawn to prairie conversions. What is that? Can you explain what that is and what the benefits are to that?
It is killing lawn. I am a lawn murderer. I am a lawn killer. I am so excited about it. I'm so excited that more and more people, and demand for our services is just through the roof this year. It was a lot last year, and it's like double this year. So yes, we are taking suburban and urban lawns, those monocultures that require tons of inputs, tons of water and fertilizers and herbicides and pre-emergent herbicides and insecticides and all that nasty stuff that goes into our groundwater and that we drink and that seeps through our bare skin as we walk barefoot on the lawn. We are taking all that nastiness away and adding biodiverse ecosystems native to the region that support wildlife, that sequester carbon and clean the air and cool the air and reduce stormwater runoff, which is a big deal with climate change right now. We don't get nice soaking rains anymore. We get 2-inch deluges that happen in 10 minutes. So the more we can keep that water on site, the better, and a more diverse landscape is going to do that for us. So I forgot the second part to your question. You'll have to ask me again.
Just what are the benefits to converting the lawn to prairie? And you had answered some of that in regards to the
I did answer. See?
Yeah, I think most of that. Yeah.
Now I'll ask you this: I know in the West, when people convert lawns to more of a environmental, they rip the lawns out and put gravel in, and they get a tax break. Is that similar in Europe in the programs where you're converting it back to native, or is that not something the government has said this is good yet?
Well, not where I'm located here in eastern Nebraska. No, we don't have any tax breaks or programs like that. And those sorts of programs are going to be unique to cities and municipalities around the country. So it just depends on where you live. You should look it up and see if those exist for you to help you mitigate the cost of these landscapes.
Fantastic. So we talked to a lot of people that recommend native plants, and we agree as well. And just as a reminder for our listeners, why are native plants so vital to everyone's ecosystem?
Yes, if we are in a mass extinction right now. People have heard about it, and unfortunately, we have caused that mass extinction, and we see it on a daily basis. We see it, or we hear it. We hear less of it as far as birds. We hear so many less bird species now than when we were younger. I think we're all pretty well aware of that. We tend to see less bugs splattering on a windshield. That's been big news in the last few years. There's just less bugs and insects and moths and things out there. So many of these species evolved with native plants and evolved to use them. So again, we go back to something like a monarch butterfly. Their larvae, their caterpillars, can only use milkweed. It's a very specialized relationship. Without milkweed, you have no monarch butterflies. And this specialization is repeated hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of times in our native ecosystem. So if we don't have the native plants that your caterpillars are using for their leaves, or even there are something like 25% of our native bee species rely on specific genus or family or species of native plant to gather pollen from. So if we don't support these specialized relationships, we lose pollinators. And we're going to lose plants too, because if we don't have the insects pollinating the plants, then the plants can't produce viable seed and create more plants and create more habitat. And if you think about birds again, right? Birds, most songbirds feed a steady diet, almost 100% of moths and butterflies and caterpillars to the young for the 2 weeks or so that they're in the nest. So insects are the base of the food chain for so many species. So if we don't have the insects, we don't have the native plants to support them, we are in big trouble.
Now, obviously, native meaning local to the person living there. It's different in Kansas City versus Denver versus Pittsburgh. How can somebody find out what is native to their particular geographical area? Where is a good source to start at?
I think I should plug myself right now. No, I shouldn't. That's so bad. No, it's good. I have an online class on my website, monarchgarden.com, that is it's about how to start your native plant garden. And it goes through all the different resources. And some of those resources include just entering your zip code at websites like Audubon Society. What are the other ones? There's so many. Xerxes Society, Pollinator Partnership. They just have you put in your zip code, and you can just start that way. The lists aren't exhaustive by any means. They're sort of baby lists, but you can start to explore that way. And then, of course, reading my book, Prairie Up, is going to launch you a long ways into figure out what's native to you.
Do you find the people who are not aware of what you do, the conversion, are they like you're resistant, or are they curious, or are they like, yeah, okay, let's do it. I'd like to have you do it on my lawn, or is there some convincing that has to go along in this?
Oh, it's all of those things. It highly depends. I mean, I have been on garden installs where we are converting a front lawn, and a small front lawn at that, for this one I'm thinking about, and a neighbor walked across the street and just yelled at me, right? And I'm just like, I'm just the guy installing the plants. If you want to learn more about it, I'm happy to talk with you about it right now, but, he stormed off, and that was the end of that. I have had some neighbors walk across the street and express interest in it. We have a nice little conversation about it. But, I share pictures of my home landscape headquarters all the time on social media. And folks ask, have you convinced any of your neighbors, or any of your neighbors come up and said, hey, I'd really like to try to do that in my own landscape? And I'm like, no, I have convinced nobody. Lawn is so entrenched in our culture and our psyche and our identity, even though it's only been around for 50, 60, 70 years. So even when we do these landscapes, I don't think we're convincing neighbors. I think we have this general idea that a garden, I'm putting garden in quotation marks here, a garden is a lot of work, right? It's a lot of upkeep. You got to know a lot to manage it. But you're not out there having to mow every week. You're not out there having to water once or twice a week. like you are with here we have tall fescue lawns that have to have an inch of water a week. You're not having to apply fertilizers, especially if you're matching plants to the site conditions, the soil, the drainage, the sunlight. It's a right plant, right place mentality. So I had to mow today for 10 minutes. We've got like 500 square feet of lawn left. And I just want to kill the rest of the lawn. That 10 minutes was way, way too long. The rest with the other native plant beds, I don't have to do any kind of maintenance like that.
So aside from people getting rid of their whole lawn, what are some ways that people can kind of make their lawns more prairie friendly?
Gradually work into
that, because people are used to having their lawns. Many people are kind of addicted to that. So what's a way that people can work into it, or maybe just have a portion, or what can you kind of encourage people to consider unlawning themselves?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way, we probably all have foundation beds around our house, and the easiest thing you can do is put an aster out there. And once that thing blooms, you can just sit there and all day long and enjoy the thousands of insects that come to it, and just realize, wow, this is really cool. Look at all the support that this one aster plant is giving to such a diversity of insects coming to use this plant for food. But then the next easiest step is, once you get hooked that way, is just to deepen those foundation beds around our houses. Most foundation beds in my neighborhood are only about 2 or 3 feet deep. That's not enough to support anything and create a sustainable, low maintenance ecosystem. So doubling and tripling the depth of our beds around our house to maybe something like 10 feet is a wonderful start. And you'll still have plenty of lawn to throw a Frisbee around, even though you can certainly throw a Frisbee in a meadow too. And
you talked about, you're not having to mow every week. People may be concerned, and in the prairie, there's not gnomes going around and weeding or cutting things down. What level of maintenance or requirement is needed once this thing is fully installed and you've converted over to a prairie yard, essentially?
Once it's fully installed and everything is in balance, and this can take a year or 2 or sometimes 3 or sometimes more. It depends on if you're using seed or potted material, how fast things are going to fill in and establish. But once it's fully established, we're pretty much talking about occasional weed control, especially tree seedlings. That seems to be the biggest issue. And then you're talking about a annual mowing. Out here in eastern Nebraska, we're doing that about early April every year. Once the soil temperatures stick at 50 degrees Fahrenheit or higher, then you can start to mow things down. And that's really about it. If you have done the right plant, right place, right plant community, you've mashed all the plants together and the site conditions and everything is knit tightly together with lots of deep layers, ground covers, and 2-foot tall plants and 4-foot tall plants. It's really quite self-sustaining. Of course, there are caveats to this conversation, and site-specific and region-specific, but generally, it is not mowing every week. It is not watering every week. It is not fertilizing 4 times a year. None of that.
Fantastic. Now, you had talked about the milkweeds for the monarchs. What are some other plants that are beneficial to monarchs? Because you see these signs that this is a monarch official garden, etc. And I've seen those gardens, and they don't all have a ton of milkweed. They have some milkweed mixed in. Are there any other plants that are beneficial to the monarchs?
Of course, pretty much any native plant out there is going to be beneficial to the monarch, because we're mostly seeing, for the most part, monarchs are adults, right? They're not caterpillars for very long. So they need flowers, and they need a diversity of flowers, and they need a diversity of flowers blooming at all times of the year. And so do all the other butterflies and moths and bees and whatever out there. They need flowers blooming all the time. So really any native plant out there is going to be putting out flowers is going to be beneficial. You don't really need that much milkweed. It's just a small slice of the pie.
Well, Benjamin, we greatly appreciate the time you've offered us and the amount of information you provided. How can people find out more about you, your website, your book, and those classes you spoke about earlier?
Yeah, online classes, webinars, downloadable garden plans, and you can take a workshop with me. All that good stuff is at my website, monarchgarden.com. You can just Google Monarch Gardens, Benjamin Vogt, really hot, sexy prairie garden designer, and you'll probably you'll find it. And then, of course, my books are Prairie Up and then A New Garden Ethic.
Well, Benjamin, again, we thank you for your time and the information for being on the program.
It's a pleasure. Thank you guys so much again.
Absolutely. And when
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.